part of their license on a sport like racing, if they wish to take a bet, need to lay up to £500. The black market is potentially something that will originate from single customer view.
So today I'm joined by Ling from SBC Info, an industry news magazine kind of online source. It's great to have you as a guest there, Peter. If you'd just like to sort of tell people a bit about yourself and how you've ended up here now.
Yeah, hi Caan, thanks for having me on. So I run the service called the Smart Betting Club. We are effectively, a primary role as an independent tipster review service. That's the first thing that we do. So we go into great detail about tipster reviews. We do Monte Carlo simulations. We do full detailed analysis of odds movement, looking at the practicality of following tipsters from the point of view of using it as an investment. And we also do reporting on them, on their ongoing performance to keep people up to date. But our remit has expanded beyond just tipster reviews because the people that come to us are, if they're not profitable, they become profitable. And then there's a whole bunch of issues or associated topics like dealing with bookmakers. I know we're going to talk about that today.
Sure, yeah.
Betting psychology, bet staking plans, all kinds of topics that surround that. So yeah, effectively, if you ask me what we do, we help people make money betting, and the tipster side of it is part of that.
But you're one of the good guys. I think that's quite important to stress because, to be quite honest, there's so many out there that provide tips and all this sort of stuff. From what I've seen, and I have had a look at your site, that I can't see any affiliate links. You're not incentivized to make the end user lose, essentially.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't. I don't think I'd sleep at night if I was on the bookmaker payroll, or if I was an affiliate. I don't like that idea. Because you're profiting from people's losses. So yeah, we don't have any affiliation deals with bookmakers. I don't think they'd be very good.
No, so yeah, of course, because it wouldn't make you any money anyway. So SBC is funded purely through sort of membership plans, right?
That's right, yeah. So people join us, they get a membership, and that allows us to spend time getting into the detail of a review versus, making a cut of a product. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes perfect sense. It's just good to make sure everyone's fully aware before we kick on. Because like you say, all those broader topics are quite important. And that's probably what's aligned us more just recently and sort of brought this call on with sort of single customer view, gambling harm. There's a lot of talk about it right now. Obviously, you've got the ongoing review. What's your take on that for now?
Well, it's a hectic topic. There's lots going on there right now. There's obviously a lot of reviews going on. There's a gambling review. There's going to be changes coming. Basically, if you're UK punter, things aren't going to be the same. And where that lands really is up in the air at the moment. Single customer view, from my point of view, is going to create more problems than it solves. It's unnecessary. And I'm trying to talk about things like a minimum bet law as well, because I feel like that needs to be part of the narrative. A lot at the moment is been driven by problem gambling, and absolutely people who have, whether you call it gambling disorder or a problem, who have an addiction, they have been targeted, they've been preyed upon by bookmakers, and there needs to be things in place to protect them.
I think a lot of them would say that is necessary. Like, obviously, you say it's unnecessary there. So kind of like, how would you counter with that? Because I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? How do we deal with sort of gambling harm without looking at sort of the data, I guess?
Well, you do look at the data, but if you look at what bookmakers do these days, and you've spoken about it in your video, on your channel, they profile winners to the nth degree. There's a New York Times, I think, did an article about what Sky Bet know. They know your mortgage payments. They know about so many different aspects, not just the technology that you use, not just the laptop or the mobile phone you use, but your credit reference, your credit score, your details. They know a lot. Absolutely, that should be used rather than single customer view. Like, put everyone in, all 100% of people that bet and track them to just fix the problem for a tiny proportion. I feel like what they should be doing is to actually target and have proper procedures in place, which they use for winners, to do that for losers and go into great detail. But there's not any fines. There's no motivation for it. I've read a book recently called Punters by Aaron Rogan. It talks about the growth of Paddy Power into Paddy Power Betfair. And at the very start of the book, it talks about how there is no motivation or incentive to provide sensible gambling from a bookmaker's perspective. But there is profit shares and bonuses that come in if you make more money from people's losses. So until that riddle is kind of worked out, until there's an actual motivation to be an operator and to do so responsibly, I think we're going to have these problems.
I think that's part of the problem, and I guess it's the data, but it's the data in terms of behaviour and what's going on, rather than the data in terms of who you are and what you've got, which is what the industry or the bookies, the BGC, or these different bodies seem to want to focus on, and I can see why, because that's where the money is. But it's just, I think it's just going to be a complete own goal if this actually goes through and becomes a thing proper.
Yeah, well, if you look at also where the biggest issues, look at casinos. Casino betting online, slots, arcades, bingo. That's where money can be lost very, very quickly, and often addiction is driven. I mean, that's not only, but a higher proportion of people do have a problem on those versus maybe sports betting. And partly, you don't hear anyone talking beyond you and I talking about separating that type from kind of skilled sports betting, because straight away, there's one simple thing that you can do. Which would, to limit people from how much they can spend on a casino online.
They should be separate products, really. I mean, these are games of skill, these are games of chance.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously, I guess, again, back to the bookies, their incentive is to pile it all into one, have the one wallet, and we can sort of cross-pollinate as much as we like.
Yeah, and it's not just casino. Things like people that bet in play on football, for example, that's a big indicator of potential harm. Because, think about it, somebody's sitting up watching South American football late at night, having a bet for the sake of it, and then chasing, often that's a big problem as well for people, and placing in-play betting, because they're just kind of getting involved with the game, getting really sucked in, and it creates this kind of problem where people put more and more in. And also, there's been a whole problem with VIPs and incentives for people to bet. They'll send people encouragement to bet even more and more, give them free bets, for example, because they know, okay, we're going to lose £100 on a free bet, but that gambler's only going to lose all that money the next month and a lot more, and maybe it'll encourage them to kickstart their betting again.
Yeah, I think that highlights it quite well. I mean, if somebody's sitting playing the slots, or maybe the NFL, like you say, at 3 a.m. in the UK on a Friday night, and let's be honest, they've probably had a few drinks, haven't they?
Yeah.
That surely should be flagged. But I think really, it all comes back to the same thing, which I said in I think you've seen the previous article. It's it's integrity, or is it identification? And it's got to be integrity, because I mean, I read an article recently. I think it was Betway allowed somebody to deposit 8 million. And lose 4 million over the space of 4 years, and they didn't identify them as having any kind of problem. But my Betway account's restricted, and I can't even remember it, so long ago I used it, but it was probably restricted within the first week, and I certainly didn't win any more than maybe a few hundred quid or £1,000 out of them. It's just that the target's all wrong in my opinion. So we're definitely on par with the same views there, which is probably going to be quite similar when it comes to minimum bet law. Now, I don't know a huge amount about this. You're probably sort of the expert in this area, but it's in Australia already, right?
It is, yeah. Australia has successfully implemented it for a while, and there's different grades of what you can get on, but a minimum bet law might suggest you could win $1,000 betting on lower grade racing. So you stick it, you've got a 10-1 horse, you can put $100 on it. You could win up to $1,000. So all bookmakers who are licensed in Australia or New South Wales, there's different rules per state. They need to abide by that to keep their license. And in many ways, I do believe it would work in the UK in a similar way. Yet what needs to happen with minimum bet law, you can't just have one bookmaker start to offer it, because they're just going to get filled in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It needs to be, across the board. All bookmakers, as part of their license on a sport like racing, if they wish to take a bet, need to, lay up to £500. But it also needs to come in with other things like best odds guaranteed. Right, best odds guaranteed is great for the punter. If you back a horse at 8-1 that wins at 10s, that's great. You're getting a bigger payout. But for a bookmaker, it's an absolute nightmare. How can you run a book if you don't know what your liability on any given horse is until the race starts? And then you can't take any more bets. So that's why it requires legislation, joined up thinking. And I do believe it would allow, bookmakers to make a profit on horse racing and to focus on it. Because especially if you take away the easy wins that they can make on the casino, if you look at the casino, they might think, well, we can make 20% ROI on a casino better, but we can make 2% on a horse racing better. Of course, they're going to focus on the casino because that's where the easy money is. But as soon as you start to kind of make them, encourage them to actually start trading again and having an opinion and running a book, and laying bets. I think that's when we'd maybe kickstart the racing industry and kickstart like turnover in the sport.
Yeah, because I think racing is in trouble amongst all of this sort of SCV and all this kind of stuff. But I suppose the sort of counter to that, if anything, is it's going to have a knock-on effect to the pricing, right? I mean, I haven't looked at Australian pricing in terms of sports books. I'd never use one, but that they must offer worse odds.
Well, yeah, they probably would do, but you've got to say, well, what's more important? Is it better to have, a market which is sustainable and where everyone can get on and bookmakers can turn a profit if they're skillful, versus a market like we have right now where only losers can get on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is it's the end. It's a long-term view, isn't it? And to be honest, the Gambling Commission seems to be coming up short with that one because was it fair and open? This is one of their main things they're mandated to do. That's certainly not the case now, and it's only going to get worse with this single customer view. Personally, I have no idea how they don't actually see how bad this is. I think they must do.
Well, they're certainly, I don't know what the number is. They're outnumbered massively in terms of the scale of the bookmaking industry and their resources. So are they incompetent? Are they under-resourced? Are they under-skilled? It's hard to know, but what we do know is that they haven't been fit for purpose on topics like Football Index, and they've been shown to be weak and to manage the licensing and the regulation quite poorly. So I think, is their existence in question? Perhaps. Do they need more funding? Absolutely. Because right now the bookmaker influence is far too large, and they're dominating the discussions and the landscape, when it comes to key topics like what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I do question whether it is a funding issue. Definitely, it's skill. So one thing that I heard from somebody else, I believe to be true, is to actually get a job at the Gambling Commission, you have to go through a vetting process to say that you basically don't bet and you haven't bet. So whilst you can see why that's a double-edged sword, can't you? You can see why they'd do that, and that would make sense. But on the other hand, it's going to create situations like Football Index all over again.
Yeah, well, they don't understand the product. You understood it, and you raised awareness about its flaws. And I've heard that from other people that said they want people in the regulator who have bookmaking experience, who know the inner workings and can call out bad procedure, bad policy, and bad operation when it happens. And yeah, that absolutely needs to change.
And that's the point as well, I think, to actually call it out and do it when they do see it, because I think they took quite a long time when they'd been told. And there was further in-depth documents that had been sent well before me. It sort of come out in the wash in the news afterwards. But that'd be interesting. So going back to minimum bet law, because we've gone on a tangent a bit there.
Yes.
What do you think the minimum bet sort of stakeage should be, really? I mean, what's reasonable? Because I'm sure the bookies are going to say a lot less, and the punters are going to want a lot more. But
I mean, I think it's reasonable. We have to meet them to be realistic there. We're not going to, £5,000 is probably unrealistic, but £500 to me, or £1,000 as an upper limit potentially, it seems a reasonable amount. If I could win £500 on any given horse race, I'd be more than happy. If I could get 50 quid on a 10-to-1 shot, that's fantastic. I like Star Sports. When they go to they do the on the rails on an actual course. Sometimes I think Simon or someone tweets their liability on a book, so they can show they win £5,000 on these 8 horses and lose £2,000 on that one, and you can see that they're taking some bets because at a course they're going to take bets, and it's just how you run a traditional book, and that's how it works. And I feel like there are no racing traders, on a sport like horse racing. They don't have racing traders. It's not a profession anymore. Because the easy money is kind of taking their focus, I believe. So getting back to that thing, getting back to having a skilled racing trader and running a book would help fix some of these problems.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, to be completely reasonable, we've got to allow them to balance their books as well. Can't just having willy-nilly crazy stakes. Do accept that. Just the way things are, we don't need to go on about it. There's plenty of different instances where they play quite an underhand way. Not all providers, but particularly the bigger ones. I think is probably a fair thing to say. So moving on then a little bit, the tipsters and the tipsters' influence. Again, this is sort of more your subject area. Having looked around in the past, I'm cynic on this one, so maybe you'll be able to turn me a little bit. But the vast majority of tipsters, I think you get people putting up prices that weren't really attainable. How do you verify that kind of stuff? How do you make that work for your as far as SBC goes?
Yeah, so that goes to what we call odds monitoring, odds tracking. So we look at a tipster, and if they're putting up a horse or a bet, we don't just do horse racing. They put up their bet at 5-1, which is 4-1 in seconds, or it collapses in price very, very quickly. Like that's not going to be a service that we're realistically going to recommend. Where it comes to something like horse racing, if they're putting up bets the night before, that's often the biggest red flag, because the markets are very weak. And other sports, maybe there's a reason that a price might collapse very quickly. So we get to the practicality of the actual odds availability, rather than just a theory and go, oh, look, this guy made 100 points, but you couldn't get the prices, so what's the point? And also it goes to the realistic issue of the fact that if you're taking 10-1 and a horse starts at 5-1, you're going to get closed down because you're beating SP. You're taking.
Well, ultimately, you're going to need to do that to win over the longer term anyway, right? So
yeah, exactly. And some certain sports like horse racing, or you might look at it as kind of you use it to build your bankroll, but ultimately long term you need to focus on scalable services and scalable tipsters and products that you can follow. So you might make your bankroll through horse racing and lose a few accounts, and then kind of shift over to exchange or Asian bookmakers or betting on sports, which allow you to scale up.
Or WhatsApp bookmakers, wasn't it? I was in your call with Lee Keys the other week, but unfortunately that's the way it's going. If we're going to have to submit absolutely everything to get a betting account in the future.
We haven't talked about that. WhatsApp bookmaker, that's potentially a black market. It's potentially something that will originate from single customer view if everyone who places a bet online or in shop is unable to, for whatever reason, for affordability limits, or bookmakers kind of say, no, we don't want to take your money. You're going to just force people offshore. And then if you go to those black market areas, India, China, America, they have existing networks set up for people to bet into a black market, into an unregulated market. So it's not too hard to see how that could come into fruition in the UK.
No, it's risky stuff in a way. But actually, I seen another article about. I will not name the company, but in the States, obviously, it's restricted in a lot of different places. It's opening up now in the States, a lot of different regulation. But I think a lot of people in the States that have bet online have got used to doing it via crypto and services that are maybe registered in like Curacao or Panama, that kind of place. But getting them back to a regulated environment, I'm not sure how the States are going to manage to do that.
No, people have relationships. They have like a PPH in America, which it's like the offshore bookmaker that they've used for years and years. They take their money, they pay their bets. They have a relationship. Why do they want to go and join a European bookmaker that's coming over that doesn't operate particularly well? Maybe doesn't pay out, or maybe closes your account quite quickly. So I believe, that's right. Once the genie's out of the bottle, it's hard to get back. And of course, from the point of view of people who have gambling harm, how do you then, if they're betting offshore, how do you then manage, how do you oversee that? You just can't.
That'd be a massive problem for the regulator to then sort of pull that one back in, I think. Not to want to scaremonger, but that's clearly already happening in other countries, so...
Yeah, and bookmakers don't care. Like, they don't care if the people with problems go abroad. It's great for them. They don't have to deal with them anymore. It's like, oh, that's offshore. They're people doing illegal stuff.
Yeah. They only talk one language, and it's money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you've been around a long time as well, Peter, with this stuff. So you've seen things develop. Where do you think it's going to go over sort of like the next 3 to 5 years as a whole? The industry, the limits, the SCV, all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's a critical junction at the moment for it, is from the UK side of it. And I think other countries should be watching on with interest, because America is basically following our pattern of what happened, and probably the same issues will come into play in a few years' time. So focusing from the UK and European, some countries have been a bit harsher on how they're treating bookmakers. We're certainly going to see a change in like advertising and their reach, with football shirts or just on TV advertising. From a betting point of view, I think crypto is certainly something that's going to kind of grow.
Does that interest you?
It definitely does. Yeah, not investing in crypto, but using crypto as a way to bet. As a way to transact. It gets rid of some of the barriers that are in place by some of the big banks, and some of the ways to transact money. So if you can bet, and also it reduces margins. I think there was an article about a company that's based in Scotland that's been founded by one of the guys who owned FanDuel, I think, and made a ton of cash by selling it. And it's raised the most amount of funding in terms of venture capital. And it is basically developing a decentralized platform for people to bet and transact. So I think, that type of thing, there's some serious money and people getting involved in that. And I think that it will reduce the margin. So right now you pay 2% commission on Betfair, but why would you need to pay that? It's their servers are all in foreign countries, and it ticks over. Once you built the platform, the technology, why can't that be 0.2%? And I think that's the type of thing that will come in.
It's a crazy world, isn't it? I think that there'll definitely be developments there. What will take and what won't, I don't know. I like the idea of the technology in terms of blockchain, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, crypto is a separate issue depending on what you're doing. But if you're putting money in and you're like, this is gambling money or this is betting money, and you accept that risk early on, and you're not a particularly massive staker or you don't need a massive bankroll, then there's less of an issue. So it is interesting. How it will develop, I'm not too sure, but I guess you'll be updating on SBC, and you'll just continue sort of proofing tipsters, whether they're on crypto or exchanges or even with sportsbooks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we do a lot of that. Like, so we say we do detailed research. When we set up SBC, it was because wanting to provide proper forensic analysis of performance of proper services. I know there's quite a lot of charlatans out there and the scams, and social media especially has a lot of them, and you've probably come across them. But there's also a growing and there's increasing good professional services that operate well, that are realistic, that have good customer service, and ultimately make a profit for their followers. And there's a lot for us to explore. So I'm encouraged by that, because it's so much easier these days to set up a website, to do payment processing. So single businesses and single sole traders can easily do that and set up a company and operate it in a smooth and proper professional fashion. So there's a lot of good experienced professional tipsters for us to examine. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think there's going to be more of that. And certainly crypto will probably form part of that, whether it's in terms of making payment or transactions for bookmakers. So but right now, like I say, it's a critical juncture of what's going to happen in the UK, and then what might happen, a knock-on effect across other countries. How are you going to get on? Is it going to be things like betting through Telegram or WhatsApp, or betting remotely? I
think that's the main issue right now, though. I mean, even like I have a lot of people contact me to do with exchanges, as you'd expect. But in fact, I had one contact me yesterday, and I've spoke to them on and off, or I've heard from them in the past previously. I know what they do. They don't take risk, basically, is what I'm trying to say. They're one of those people who doesn't take risk. And they're having to go through affordability right now for like crazy amounts, and they're sort of trying to pull out. It's just a minefield for that sort of stuff. I think that is the issue. It's almost like, I mean, gambling successfully is one problem, but the future problem for people that want to gamble and make money from it, at least, is getting on.
It is, but it's not just you. It's not just the guys who are winning that are having these problems right now. There's many other people who are small bettors, maybe not even particularly profitable, who are having source of wealth checks, affordability checks. And obviously, if there's a £100 limit or a £500 limit across the board, and that's for everything from a scratch card to placing a bet in a bookmaker shop to putting your deposit online, like, it's going to impact more and more people. So it's. That's why you're going to have more potential usage of some of these offshore options, for example.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll stay tuned. I'll keep track of SBC, see what you come up with in the future, because you do write full in-depth articles, and I advise anyone to go and check them out anytime, whether it's minimum bet law, SCV, all those kind of topics. So thanks for coming on, Peter. I appreciate it. If there's anything else you want to add?
Well, you can go check us out on Twitter, SBC Info, and obviously smartbettingclub.com. I'm happy to take questions. I often get emails and questions from people who are starting to check out what I do, or, is it possible you can, make a profit, or all tipsters scams? And I'm always happy I've always got questions like that. I'm always happy to take people's questions and answer them.
Yeah, that's good. Happy days. Thanks for coming on, Peter.